I'm John McQuay with 8541 Tactical, and this is Mail Call Mondays, the show that answers your questions about precision rifles, optics, and equipment. Well, we're here on another Monday, and you guys requested that I covered my duty gear after we went over some of my off-duty gear, plainclothes wear, basically my everyday carry kind of thing. So this is it. I'm not going to cover everything that's in my pockets when I work, but I'm going to cover the main stuff that's on my bat belt and some of the key things that I carry in my pockets. Now, first of all, I'm going to tell you that what officers carry is going to be dictated by each one of their departments. I am a full-time law enforcement officer when I'm not doing the Mail Call Monday stuff. I actually have to have something to continue to actually support my family until this thing can do it full-time. And also gives me some decent benefits and gives me that lovely adrenaline rush from day to day. So my current position in my department, for most of the last 10 years, I worked as a regular patrol officer. For about the last year, I was promoted to a patrol supervisor. And that means now instead of answering calls for service, I'm driving around, I'm approving reports, I'm making sure my guys are doing what they're supposed to be doing, and handle complaints from the public and that general stuff. I still do occasionally make traffic stops, and I still do occasionally make calls for services, so I still have to have all the same patrol gear that I did working as a regular patrol officer. So let's cover some of the stuff that I carry here. We'll go through my belt kind of in a clockwise rotation around the right hand side, back around left, and back to center. When I wear my belt, it's connected up kind of like this. I didn't feel like putting it on and modeling it for you guys because it really doesn't fit right unless I put all the other stuff on as well. Up front here, just a simple little Velcro key keeper. Most of the stuff is Safariland gear. I will let you know what isn't. This is Safariland. Just a place to put my keys. I like it because it's held in by an interior snap and then by a Velcro closure. So I've got two retention methods to make sure that I don't drop my keys. It keeps them bundled up and quiet and keeps them from shining or anything. Main thing is it keeps them from rattling when I'm walking around. Keepers like this are kind of necessary because you don't want to put stuff in your front slash pockets when you sit down. This gear tends to push down into the front of your thighs, and if you got keys in there, it'll just dig into your leg, poke you. It's just not a fun situation to be in. The front slash pockets on my uniform is just about useless. Touch on uniform real quick. Our department for patrol officers gives you the option of wearing the old dark navy blue polyester uniform, or you can wear the BDU uniform, which in my case I wear 511 BDUs just because I like the pocket layout. I prefer BDUs because I've spent most of my adult life wearing BDUs in uniform. I think they breathe better, I like the way that they move better, and I think they're a little bit more durable. They stand up to snags and climbing over fences and all that stuff. I think the polyester wears a little bit quicker. The flip side is the polyester doesn't fade anywhere near as quick as BDUs, and typically you have to retire BDUs because they faded before you have to retire them because they're ripped or not serviceable anymore. So most of the time I'm actually wearing the BDUs, so I have cargo pockets on my thighs. I have two sets of pockets across the chest that make it really easy to store stuff and to access things that I need. Coming back here, my holster. This is a Safariland ALS holster. It is a triple retention holster, which is my recommendation for anyone working in uniform. The old argument against civilian open carry proponents will always reference law enforcement officers. Well, you will see the vast majority of law enforcement officers are carrying holsters outside their body that have multiple forms of retention on them. And this holster has three different forms of retention. The first form of retention is just the grip of the holster on the firearm, which is adjustable back here on the back. The next form of retention is I have a hood that rotates forward, and the hood rotates fairly smoothly and fairly quickly. And then there is another hidden form of retention before I can actually draw the weapon out. So there's another retention device that has to be disabled before you can draw the handgun. And as you see, it can be removed from the holster fairly quickly. It's not anywhere as quick as my old Safariland 070, which was just a snap holster. It had a top snap and then another snap for the secondary retention, and then of course still the third form of retention was the fit. For that holster, I could draw very, very fast. I was getting down into sub 1 second draws from a triple retention holster with it when I trained all the time with that. The drawback to that is it didn't allow you to mount a weapon light. This holster comes in non-weapon light and weapon light versions, so I can keep my light attached. And that is a really, really big deal. When we were authorized to carry weapon lights, I originally had it in a belt pouch on the front of my gear, and so when I needed my weapon light, I had to draw my handgun, snap on my weapon light, and use it. And then if it came to a situation where I had to go hands-on with somebody, now I had to strip the weapon light off, holster my handgun, and then stow the weapon light. And it just was a lot of time. It caused some fumbling. So as soon as I could get rid of that and go to a weapon light capable holster, I did. The other additional issue was on the 070, to secure your weapon, you actually had to snap the snaps. On this holster, because the secondary retention is automatic, the ALS, the automatic locking feature, or automatic locking system, all I have to do is drop the handgun back in, and it's locked in the holster. So that means if I have to go hands-on to somebody and they're charging me, or it's a fight and I can't shoot them, then I can slap the handgun in the holster and be up ready to defend myself and take care of business without having to worry about is my weapon really secured in my holster. This has happened a couple of times where you have cause to draw down on somebody and cover them, and then you need to get that weapon holstered up. You get things secured, and then you find your weapon wasn't really secured. It was just the actual friction of the holster that kept it in there, and that's not a good thing. Many police officers have been killed with their own service weapon because the felon was able to get control of it during a fight. So triple retention holsters, in my opinion, are mandatory for uniformed patrol officers, and I practice what I preach, so I run a triple retention holster. Really good piece of equipment. I haven't had any problems with mine. However, I did have a coworker, one of the officers I work with, had the tab on the inside of the holster break off. And before it broke off, it just cracked though, and the Safari laminate, his holster is slightly different than mine. It's a newer version, and it had Safari laminate on the back side here, which all Safari laminate is a pattern type soft vinyl over a harder Kydex type material. But that cracked, and it actually caused him, when he drawed his handgun, to hit the magazine release, and that caused his magazine to hang halfway out. And when we inspected the holster later on, we found that it had cracked and that little piece was flapping free. So if you have one of these holsters, make sure that the little indent on the inside of the holster, make sure that it hasn't been cracked or damaged. It happens when you go to holster up quickly and the bezel of the weapon light or the muzzle of the handgun catches that tab, and hitting it time and time again will crack it and break it. If it is cracked, I think you can cut it off. I don't think it really will affect the function of the holster, but you may want to call Safariland and see if they can get that fixed for you. Other than that, I've been really happy with this holster. You can tell it's really rashed up down here. It's had a pretty rough life, and I've never had any issues with my weapon being secured in here. One quick tip though for you guys that may want to utilize this holster: it comes with a plug here on the weapon light section. You need to knock that plug out. What can happen is when you're shooting, a casing can fall down into here, and then when you go to holster up the weapon, the casing is trapped down in the front of the holster, and it won't allow the weapon to go in far enough to engage the automatic lock, and you won't be able to rotate the hood back up, and it's really difficult to get that casing out because you can't really fit your hand down in there. And when it's mounted on your body solid enough you can't rotate it or flip it upside down. So make sure you pop that plug out. Your light may get dusty a little bit quicker, but that's not a big deal if you're doing regular weapons maintenance, but it'll allow any debris that falls in to fall right out the bottom of the holster and still allow you to lock the weapon in. So just a good tip there. The handgun that I use is required by our department. It is a Glock 21 SF. This is the only handgun that's approved by our department for uniform carry, and it is issued by my department. So this is actually their gun. The Glock 21 SF, I really have no complaints about. I thought it was the greatest thing in the world until they brought out the new 41, the 41 Gen 4. I think that is the way to go for a 45 in uniform carry, because you get the addition of being able to change the back strap. You get a longer sight radius, longer barrel. It'll help keep your weapon light a little bit cleaner when you're shooting. But just tons of benefits on that handgun. Nevertheless, the 21 SF is an excellent duty handgun. The only addition that I've made on it is it has this Hogue slip-on grip on here. If you choose to utilize one of these, be very careful. As they get old, they lose some of their stretch and they start to get a little loose on here. This one will be coming off sometime soon because it has just gotten to the point where I'm a little bit iffy about it, so it's going to get stripped off. The reason I put this on here is when we went from the 21s, which is a fatter grip, to the 21 SF, I had a little bit of air gap between my palm and the side of the handgun. And the slip-on grip here has a little bit of a palm swell, which helps fill that spot. Now, having competed with the Glock 17 for more than a year now, I realized that that air gap probably is not causing any issues at all, and there is a risk that with this slip-on grip, if I have to fight for my handgun, that the grip could squirm around on there and cause some issues. So I'm more than likely going to strip this off and just go bare or put some skate tape grips back on here. Now, the weapon light that I have on here is a TLR1 HL. It is Streamlight's high lumen version of their TLR1 that's been out for quite some time, and I really like this light. It has a really secure locking mechanism. It doesn't rattle around on here at all, but it's still easy to get off when you take it off for cleaning or if you have any other reasons to remove it. I really like the paddles on here. Unlike the Surefire, you don't push forward, you just have a momentary down on the paddle with your support side or up on your strong side to engage the light. And it springs back pretty quickly, and if you are pushing down on the momentary side, you can't accidentally lock it on. Anytime you release it, it will go off. If you want to lock it on for a constant on, then you push it the other direction and it locks on, but it's still quick to swipe off. The other feature I really like is that it has a strobe mode, so a double tap on the switch will turn on strobe, and that is really, really good for disorienting an assailant. Works really nicely. You do have to be careful and be judicious on how you use it, because if you've got a lot of splash off of white objects or light colored walls and that, then it can disorient you a little bit as well. So, you know, be careful on how you use it. Definitely use it in training before you decide to use it in real. But overall, been very happy with this light. Very good output. It has good beam quality. The beam quality is not as smooth as the X300 Ultra from Surefire, but you're also getting it at a considerably less or considerably lower price point than the Surefire. Both of them are extremely high quality weapon lights. No problem using either one. I've got the X300 Ultra on my Glock 17 whenever I'm carrying that off duty, or when I'm shooting in a competition that does not prohibit weapon lights. That is it for the handgun. The sights on here are Glock Night sights, great tritium sights, and our department has installed Glock minus connectors in the handgun because we had some complaints from the slightly higher trigger pull on the SF compared to the G21 when we upgraded to the SF. So they switched out to that. We haven't any problems with the minus connectors. They're good to go. So that is my handgun. Now I rotate around here to the back of my belt. You'll notice I've got two cuff carriers. One is empty right now because those cuffs were used last night and they're pretty nasty right now, so they need to be cleaned. The center of my belt is clear. I don't have anything on here because most of the time we're riding in cars, and if you have anything back here, it will definitely irritate your back over some time. There are guys that will put rubber glove cases back here and all kinds of other stuff. Not me. I'll leave it blank. It just works easier on my back. That, and if you get into a situation where you're knocked backwards and you fall, you don't want anything right in the middle of your spine. That's why I don't advocate small of the back holsters. If you have any kind of object here that impacts your spine, it can definitely cause you injury, so I like to keep that clear. I carry 2 sets of cuffs because we have busy nights here where even 2 sets is not enough. I end up getting the extra set out of my car and then still have to end up using flex cuffs. We end up with a lot of situations where we're breaking up very, very large groups and end up having to cuff up quite a few people. So most patrol officers on my department will carry 2 sets of cuffs. When they go into an administrative role or a detective's role or something, then they'll usually drop back just to 1 set because cuffs are steel, cuffs are heavy. They do add to the weight on your belt. I use regular Smith & Wesson handcuffs because they're cheap. They work really well and they're fairly low profile, so they don't cause a great big huge package back here pushing into my back. ASP cuffs are pretty decent. We've got a lot of guys that use them. I just don't feel the need for them because they are quite a bit chunkier. They don't fit in standard cuff cases. You have to get cuff cases that are made specifically for them. I recently switched to these clamshell cuff cases. I used to have cuff cases that snapped over the top, but when I became a supervisor, I had to upgrade my gear from the silver snaps to anything that has snaps needed to be gold. And instead of paying to replace the snaps on my cases, I just bought new cuff cases. My old ones were pretty rashed up anyway. I am not a great big huge fan of these. They work, but it's difficult to get the cuffs back into them, and there have been quite a few times where you get your cuffs in your hand, you get ready to cuff somebody, the situation changes, you no longer feel the need to do so, or somebody else has already got them cuffed up and you need to put the cuffs away. And it's so much easier on the Safariland snap top cuff cases to drop your cuffs back in and snap them. The plus side of these is that you don't have to worry about your cuffs falling out if your cases become unsnapped, which they do from time to time from getting in and out of the car, or if you jump a fence or something, you can get those cases unsnapped and you can end up losing a set of cuffs. Cuffs are not super expensive, but you definitely want to still have them on your belt when you need them. I'm going to rotate over here to my left-hand side, and I've got my Surefire G2Z. This light is going on 11 years now, I think. It's pretty roughed up. I switched it from incandescent bulb to an LED bulb, but it's still going strong, and I have it in a Surefire holster here. I did have an issue with this holster. One of the springs in it came loose, and it caught the tail cap on the light and locked it in, and I really had to use a ton of force to pull them apart. And when I did, it snapped the spring and it damaged the tail cap on the light. I called Surefire, explained to them what happened. They were quick to offer to replace the light, but I didn't think that was really necessary, so they sent me a new tail cap and they sent me a new spring for the holster. I have not put the new spring in the holster because I think the friction of the rubber ring on the G2Z and the secondary spring that's in here hold it in just fine, and I don't want to run the risk of getting it locked in there again. I can, in this holster, stick it bezel down, but I prefer tail cap down because it allows me to keep the light turned to momentary on so I can pull it out and use it, and it doesn't, or it protects the tail cap so it's not accidentally turned on when I sit in the car. This little strap here is just my radio holster. It's just a Velcro strap on a piece of leather. It is a Safariland piece, and I find this works great for being able to get your radio in and out quickly without a whole bunch of other encumbering straps and pouches and all kinds of nonsense. I haven't had it come out in any foot pursuits yet. The old metal loops, those would constantly eject your radio during a foot pursuit. It was not a good thing. This works really well. Now for tactical work, when I was a SWAT officer, I would make sure I had a radio pouch that covered the lights in the display on my radio. That way, when transmissions came across and the LEDs came on the radio, it wouldn't give away position. Not so much worry on regular patrol. But if it's a concern, then consider a pouch that actually covers your lights on your radio. Coming forward here on my belt, I think everybody will recognize what this is. This is an X26 Taser from Taser International, and I keep it in a Serpa holster from Blackhawk. Now, those of you guys that watch the channel for a while know I'm not a big fan of the Serpa holsters for your handguns. However, when I was first issued the Taser, it came with a really crappy holster, and there weren't a whole lot of options on the market at the time. And the Serpa was one of the few that actually go on a duty belt that I thought was really an upgrade over the one that was provided with the Taser. It has a couple of really nice features. First of all, it is cross draw. So Taser recommends that you carry your Taser opposite side of your body from your firearm. So in this case, I carry my firearm on my right side. My Taser is on the left side of center line of my body. So that means I have to come over to cross draw it with my right hand. Of course, the other option is you can put just a left-handed holster on and get used to drawing your Taser with the left hand. The reason it needs to be on separate center lines of the body is we've seen news stories in the last couple of years of officers shooting suspects and then claiming that they were trying to reach for their Taser and they thought they had their Taser. I'm not sure how you can really do that if you are abiding by their requirements, abiding by Taser's recommendations, and if you train regularly with your handgun and with your Taser. It's two totally different motions. It is a different motion to remove my Taser from its holster than it is to remove my handgun from its holster, and there's a different feel between the Taser and the handgun and a different set of controls between the Taser and the handgun. So that's one of the reasons the Taser is where it is at. There are a lot of guys that will carry them on thigh holsters to get stuff off the belt because your belt will start to get a little crowded. I dislike that because with the Taser where it's at, I can access it while I'm seated in the car, and that has happened before where I've had a prisoner try to fight me inside the car. So having the Taser where I can access it while I'm seated in the driver's seat is a great benefit to me. I really don't want it down on my thigh where I've got to try to clear it through the seat belt and between the door and all this nonsense. So this has worked really, really well for me. Now, forward of my Taser is my magazine pouch. Our department does require that uniform officers carry 2 magazines, so I do have a double magazine pouch here. This is a Safariland magazine pouch, and it's worked great for me. I've had this pouch for over 10 years. And it has 2 mounting positions. Either you can mount it this way with the magazines facing up, or you can mount it on the side with the magazines facing to the right or to the left, whichever direction you decide to go. It really is an individual officer preference on our uniform regs on which way we mount them. I mount them faced up because that's the way I started, that's the way I went through our academy with, and I really prefer this because it gives me continuity of training between what I carry on duty, what I carry off duty, and what I compete with. My magazines are always facing up with the bullets towards the center line of my body, so when I go back and grab them, no matter where it's at, it's the same motion. If I'm off duty or if I'm in competition, it may be slightly behind my center line. If I'm working on duty, it's almost perfectly on my center line. They're just to the left of my belt buckle here, so they're right in front of my body. Keeping the top up also helps that if you're doing something and one of these pouches pops open, then you're very unlikely to lose your magazine. The magazine still has to come up and overcome the weight of the pouch holding it down, or the weight of the strap holding it down. When it's on the side, it's really easy for that to pop open and something else to catch it and drag the magazine out. So that's one of the reasons that I prefer to do it that way. Some guys like to turn it on the side because the width of the carrier, it's narrower than it is tall, and so when you turn it on its side, it doesn't push down into your leg as badly, and if you got a little bit more around the middle, then it doesn't push into your gut. I've got a little bit around the middle and it does push down into my legs, but I think the slight discomfort and the slight annoyance is offset by the benefit of having the mag pouch set this way. Now behind the mag pouch, I have a fixed blade knife set in here in a Kydex sheath. Protects it really well, keeps it locked in very, very well, and the way it sits down behind the buckle when I'm wearing it, the guard for the blade actually hooks behind the buckle, and there's no way to pull the knife out unless I choose to draw it. And if I choose to draw it, I draw it in an upward fashion that will then pull it out of the sheath and disengage any of its resistance. The knife itself is a custom carry made by Cody Handley, and we'll leave the link to his website down below. And this was a knife that my wife commissioned for me for a gift. It is a full custom knife. He'll make it to different specifications that you have. Obviously I went with the black scales because it blends in very well, and since you're only seeing this portion of the blade sticking out past my buckle, it very often goes unnoticed. And if I'm standing interviewing somebody or talking to somebody, my hands are usually about in that location and they block any view of the knife handle. So really nice thing to have. Now, this knife isn't really primarily for self-defense. It's a very, very nice tool. It's a really thick blade. It is very sharp, but it gives me the ability to be able to pry on things. The back pommel here, although it's not a glass breaker, does work really well for breaking windows. So just the general overall utility of it is really nice. However, it does serve as a backup weapon, and the way I have it, it's much easier to get it in and out when it's actually on my body. The way I have it set up in the sheath here, it gives me the ability, if someone is trying to take away my handgun and I'm fighting for control of the handgun, I can keep it pinned in with my right hand side, and I can access that blade with my support side and take care of business. So it does work very well in that function, and you're seeing more and more officers will carry a fixed blade knife for that reason. Also, in some situations, you just may not have the coordination or the ability to access a folding knife that's stashed away in a pocket somewhere, and with a fixed blade, it's just grip it and rip it, and then you're ready to go. It's very durable because of how thick the blade is, so I don't have to worry about breaking it on stuff. I can do things with it that I would be very hesitant to use a thinner folding blade knife for. So it's all around utility. As you can see from the way the blade looks here, it actually gets used fairly often for various different chores. That is about it for the gear that I carry on my belt. Now I'll go over a couple of things that I carry in my pockets. The first thing I'll go over is my flashlight here. This is another Surefire light. This is one of their polymer lights. It's not super expensive, and I use it just as a nifty little utility light. Now what you'll notice is different on here is it has this little thumb loop and pocket clip on it. This is a Firearm switchback, and the Firearm switchback gives a whole lot of added utility to this light. Now there is a clicky switch on the back here, but the clicky is also momentary, so you just push it slightly and you get your momentary, push it all the way in and it clicks on. That system combined with the Firearm switchback allows me to keep this in my cargo pocket, and when I need to, I can bring it out and I can use it as a searchlight for anything that would be an administrative task or something that doesn't require me to have a weapon in my hand. Now, I do have a weapon light on my weapon, but there's a possibility that the batteries could die, it could malfunction, etc. And there are also departments out there that prohibit their officers from carrying weapon lights for whatever preconceived notions that they have. In that case, this is a really good option because you can scan in this mode. If you need to draw your weapon, you can simply flip the light over, and it has this little thumb stud here, and you can come up with your handgun and you can still illuminate the light by pushing with your thumb, and it pushes the switch back against your middle finger knuckle, and it works really, really well. I've used it on occasions even with my weapon light mounted just to try it out, but the finger loop also adds utility that if I'm in a situation and I have this light and I need to draw and utilize my handgun, then it's real easy just to get this out of the way and come up with my handgun. Now, of course, you can drop it, but unless you train repeatedly to drop objects when you're startled, you grip on to whatever you have. So, you know, just a nice little thing. If you work around water, because we do have quite a bit of water around where I work, it's also nice to prevent you from dropping your light, losing it in the water. And a little pocket clip, because when I've been off duty, I've just hooked that onto my pocket. And I still do have that added ability because I don't always have a weapon light on my off-duty gun. The reason, if you're counting now, you'll realize I have a weapon light. I have one handheld light on my belt and another handheld light in my pocket. That's 3 light sources. We can pretty much discount the weapon light because you're not going to search with that weapon light. The only time you bring the weapon light into play is if you may actually need to utilize the weapon. The light on my belt and the light in my pocket are my primary utility lights / search lights. In law enforcement, we have a saying, 2 is 1, 1 is none. And that basically means plan for failure. So you can plan that one of these lights will fail, and my life depends on being able to identify threats, so I need to have a working light with me at all times. I don't utilize these as my primary lights either, though, because CR123s get expensive if you're burning through a set every couple of days. So I have a 511 rechargeable light that I'll use for regular illuminating crime scenes or traffic stops or stuff like that, where I'm going to be using it for an extended amount of time searching. That's when that 511 light comes in, and eventually I'm going to get off my butt and I'm actually going to do a review on it because it's a really handy light. It was kind of expensive when I picked it up, but I'm glad I did. It comes with a charger that allows me to charge it in the car, so it always sits on the passenger seat with a full charge ready to go when I'm ready to go to work. Now, the next thing I carry in my pocket is a folding knife. Now, as we mentioned, 2 is 1, 1 is none. I carry 2 folding knives, or I'm sorry, 2 knives. And this folder is a Benchmade Adamas. And this gets used for really more administrative tasks, opening food packages, that kind of stuff, when you really don't want to whip out a fixed blade knife. And although it is, when deployed, almost as large as the fixed blade, it is a really, really beefy folding knife. It has a D2 steel blade, and it uses the Benchmade Axis lock, which is a very, very smooth action. I really like it because I can open and close it one-handed. The Axis lock is really, really quick and smooth to use. Now, this knife has seen a lot of beating. This is my backwoods outdoors folding knife as well. That's why you'll see a lot of the coating has been worn off the blade. I've actually used this for chopping wood and batoning and all kinds of other stuff, so it really, really has gotten beaten up. Now, the D2 tool steel, is great as far as durability goes. It's difficult to sharpen and doesn't hold an edge as well as I would like, but it really is durable. It's still got a good tip on it. I haven't chipped out any pieces of the blade, even though I've beaten on it. So overall, I'm very happy with this knife. It is kind of expensive, but you really get what you pay for, and it's made in the US. So good quality knife, really a big fan of it. And it just rides in my pocket for whatever. The last thing on my personal gear that I carry with me is my nifty little pen here. Now, this is an American Sniper's bullet pen. It's actually 2 .308 casings and then the pen cartridge in it. It's engraved with the AmericanSnipers.org logo on here and the website. And it's a really neat piece. I used to use disposable pens all the time as a regular patrol officer. I got this a couple years back and decided to start putting it into function because for a while it was just sitting in my desk drawer, and it's too nice of a pen not to get used. And it's also kind of a reminder that the pen is mightier than the sword. I think it's ironic that it's 2 .308 bullet casings, but it's still a really, Really nice ballpoint pen. Of course, it's got replaceable cartridges in it. And in law enforcement, this is the tool that's get used more than anything else. It gets used to take field notes. Used to get used to write tickets and reports, although most of the tickets and the reports are done on a computer and printed out and all that stuff now. But I still use this pen more than any other tool on a nightly basis. So figured why not have a good one. And of course, proceeds go to American Snipers, which is a great organization that helps our snipers deployed overseas. That's it as far as my personal gear. One last piece of department issued equipment that I'll talk about that I initially was not too fond of, but I have grown to love, and that is my camera. Our department policy is anytime we are in contact with the public for a law enforcement purpose, so either a traffic stop or a call for service or we get flagged down or something, we're supposed to have the cameras on and recording. The battery life is not enough and the recording capacity is not enough for us to record an entire continuous shift, nor we want to, but for any time that we're actually interacting with the public other than in a casual nature, it needs to be recorded. Initially, when I was a patrol officer and these were sent out to us and our policy was implemented, I was not a big fan of it. The more I used it and the more times it saved my butt on people trying to lie about our interactions, the more I became a fan of these cameras. And now as a supervisor, I really am a fan of them. It helps me out incredibly when I receive a citizen's complaint about one of my guys and I can go pull their camera footage, see exactly what happened, and either explain to the citizen why what occurred or why the officer was legally justified in doing what he did, or see what behavior either needs to be modified or maybe if we could go about it a different way. So the cameras are great in being able to give me a tool to more effectively supervise. So that's it as far as the duty equipment that I carry and use regularly. Now I do wear soft body armor underneath my uniform. That's pretty much standard across our country now. I'd say you're a very foolish officer if you're out performing your duties in uniform and not wearing soft armor. But there's nothing special about my vest. It's just a regular soft armor vest designed to defeat the round my duty pistol shoots. And in the event that something bad occurs, I do have available in the trunk of my car an active shooter kit where I can throw on rifle plates with spare magazines and a tourniquet added to that. In addition, my patrol rifle, we've done a little bit of video covering how my patrol rifle is set up in the past, so I'll try to link that down below. If not, you can go on our Mail Call Mondays master list, or you can search on YouTube and I'm sure you can find it. Here shortly, maybe if you guys are interested, I will go over how my long rifle's set up. I still do have a designated marksman rifle that I carry when I'm out on patrol. It's an AR-10, and there's not a huge specialized setup on it, but it's got a few little tricks to it. So if you guys want to see that, leave a comment down below, and maybe next week we'll get to going over what all is involved in that rifle. But we've already run long enough on this. Now, the last thing I do want to say is that this is Memorial Day. This is not National Barbecue Day, so it is a day to remember our fallen warriors. And if you would, go on over to our website, and I'll leave the link down below, and you can read an account of two Marines that were killed in Ramadi in 2008. That's Corporal Yale and Lance Corporal Herter. And these two Marines did exactly what Marines should do. They stood up, they stood their post, they placed themselves between a car bomb and their sleeping brothers, and they gave their lives defending their brothers. And really, you can go on our website. We have Lieutenant General John Kelly's speech, an excerpt from that, accounting how the whole situation went down. And it really, I've read it numerous times now. A lot of you guys have probably already read it, and it really puts a lump in your throat. And for this Memorial Day, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to read that, and I'd like you to pass it on to somebody. Relay that story to someone else so these two Marines can live forever. The important thing is to remember our warriors, to pass their legacy on to our children. This is the only way for us to breed the next generation of warriors. And God help us when we get to a point where we can no longer make men like these two Marines. So please go read that, go share it with your kids. Explain to them why we hold these values so high, that selflessness, that willing to give your life for your brothers. And that's really all I have for this Memorial Day and for this Mail Call Mondays. If you've liked this video, please make sure you like, share, and subscribe. If you got questions or comments, please leave them in the comments section below or send them to us on Facebook or Twitter. And before my voice goes out, and until next time, get out and shoot!